every year there's a handful of college football teams that have absolute playoff aspirations from day one. And this year, Notre Dame is absolutely one of them. Today, we're getting into a series of videos where we spotlight some of the opponents on Texas A&M's 2025 schedule. And this year includes some really tough road games, including LSU, Texas, and of course, Notre Dame in Week 3. So Aggies, this is a way to kind of understand the opposition, understand what we're getting into, the strengths, the changes from the team compared to last year. And for Notre Dame fans, this is your chance to see how an outsider views your program. And if you have any kind of input to give me or give the Aggies about your team, please drop them in the comments below because we want to learn more about the opposition. So guys, thanks for being here. Like and sub. This is going to be the first of a series where we do these. We're going to do LSU, Texas. We're going to probably do Florida, maybe Arkansas. We're going to do as many opponents as we can in the preseason leading into Week 1 just to help understand the schedule. But with Notre Dame, you're obviously facing a team that is fresh off of a national championship run. They made it all the way to the Natty. Marcus Freeman enters year 4, and year 3 was all about gaining that respect. When I was previewing Notre Dame, when I was doing my research, going into Week 1, looking at the team, listening to what the Notre Dame media had to say, listening to what Notre Dame talking heads had to say about this team and Marcus Freeman, last year was really playoff or bust. They had the pieces, they had the continuity, they had the coordinators, that's for damn sure, and there was really no excuse for not making it with the schedule that was ahead. It was like get past A&M and then just take care of business. And in Week 1, they got past A&M. It was a close, competitive game. We'll probably talk more about some of the stuff that happened in that game in a second. But in Week 2, disaster struck. You lose to Northern Illinois. Mac heart attack. It happened. And you're thinking, is this Marshall all over again? Is this what this Notre Dame program under Marcus Freeman is doomed to do? Win some big games, lose games you're not supposed to, always keep yourself short of the final goal. But I think in a year where you make the Natty, the most impressive thing about Notre Dame was how they rebounded from that loss. They ended up going 11-1 with that being the only loss leading into that national championship game. That's the only other loss they had was in the Natty. And that just showed a lot of resiliency, and I think the ability to kind of get to that next step or even get to that next player is really what has been what defines Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. You lost the game, play the next one. You lose a player, you lose Charles Jagasaw. What's the next O-lineman up? In that game, Week 1 versus A&M last year, we were all talking about how we thought that our new prize pick in the portal, Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, were going to dominate a young and inexperienced and at that time injured Notre Dame offensive line. And it turned out to just not be the case because they could just plug and play pretty much anywhere. Now, obviously, Notre Dame puts out offensive linemen like no one else's business, same with tight end. But that happened all over the field. And I think that's going to be kind of a consistent talking point when you're going position by position with Notre Dame, because you're going to see that Notre Dame lost a lot of star players from last year, like a Howard Cross, like a Riley Mills. But last year, players would just fill in, and there was not a drop-off. Same with Benjamin Morrison. They found Leonard Moore because of opportunity, and Leonard Moore is now maybe the Thorpe favorite going into the year. That's what Notre Dame is under Marcus Freeman. Ready from the guy at the back of the bench to the starting quarterback. That's what you expect. So, Aggies, if we're looking at Notre Dame and you're seeing Charles Jagasaw down again, very unfortunate, got hurt this offseason, doesn't mean you have a massive opportunity. It could, but more than likely Notre Dame's going to fill in those slots when you see injuries. And those injuries might actually pay dividends this season because a lot of guys got experience last year that maybe wouldn't have otherwise. But before we get into all that, we got to talk about Mike Denbrock. Obviously, he was the OC at Notre Dame, then LSU. And at LSU, he had that high-flying, quarterback-centric, Heisman-winning offense that was record-setting in terms of passing stats. But then he comes to Notre Dame, and he kind of just throws that whole thing away. Totally new offense, totally adapted to the personnel. Not only offensive personnel, but an offensive style that can play off of an elite, opportunistic defense that can flip the field on a moment's notice. Mike Denbrock's a chameleon. And I expect he'll do the same thing now with a young quarterback, CJ Carr, in the mix, but a lot of the same ingredients that he had last year. I'm sure there'll be another wrinkle there. They lose Al Golden to the NFL, the defensive coordinator. They bring in Chris Ash, who was the DC over at Ohio State when they won their last national championship. A lot of people calling it a very sneaky good hire. And you get in a national championship DC, I mean, that has to be a good hire. But that defense, despite losing some of those names, brings back a lot of pieces. Let's get right into the defense talk. Let's start up front because they lose Riley Mills, they lose Howard Cross, and they lose R.J. Oben. but they're not going to lose the good stuff. They still have plenty of players to go around because Riley Mills and Howard Cross missed a lot of time last year. In guys like Gabriel Rubio, Jason Onye, Donovan Heinisch, these guys all got a ton of reps, and they bring in a Jared Dawson, an experienced transfer, to round out that defensive tackle rotation. And you get a guy like Donovan Heinisch, who's another quick-footed guy like Howard Cross was, maybe undersized defensive tackle. You get it, the Gabriel Rubio, who can be kind of that stalwart up front. And I think this is more of a steady group on the interior, where you're going to see more of the stars, I would think, on this defensive line would be on the outside, where a guy like a Joshua Burnham, who moved from linebacker to defensive end, brings a lot of athleticism to defensive end. And then a guy that you got to look out for, Aggies, is Boubacar Traore. This is a guy that might have the most upside, at least of the experience, the more upperclassmen group on this defensive line now, redshirt sophomore. But of course, they have 5-star Bryce Young, not the quarterback, who will probably come off the bench, and he has all the physicals in the world. So looking at this defensive line, I think a steady interior and a very high upside exterior. Unfortunately, their most experienced outside guy, who's battled injury, he was out for most of the year last year, Jordan Patello, if not out for almost all the year. He went down again this offseason, so they'll be down another guy there. But again, they just will hit you in waves. And I feel like you could look at their D-line a little bit the way we look at A&M's D-line. You lose some of the main names, but you have a lot of guys that are going to fill in, and they might be able to hit you in waves. And I think this defensive line is going to benefit greatly from what's behind them. At linebacker, it's a bunch of studs. They lose Jack Kaiser, and what you lose at Jack Kaiser, I mean, you got to mention it. The guy played in 70 freaking college games. I think that's the all-time record at Notre Dame. That might be up there in all-time college history. An insane amount of experience to lose, but I wouldn't be losing any sleep over this position. They have Jalen Sneed, who can go sideline to sideline with anybody. He's probably more of a pass rush type of outside linebacker. They have Drake Bowen, who's going to play middle linebacker. He's going to kind of be that quarterback of that linebacker group. Just makes intelligent decisions on the football field, takes great angles, very experienced player. They have Jaden Osbury, who's kind of a plug-and-play outside linebacker. And then they have Kingston Viamu-Asu, who I think is an absolute stud in the making, an extremely athletic linebacker who maybe is more of a pass rush build, but really is an all-around player. This linebacker group is going to be nasty, and it might be one of the very best in the country. Now, in the secondary, what's behind them, you lose players just like you lost in that D-line. If you lose the 2 stars, Howard Cross and Riley Mills in the middle, back in the secondary, you lose Benjamin Morrison and you lose Xavier Watson. Those are 2 absolute superstars. But Benjamin Morrison missed most of the season last year. Guys like Christian Gray got a lot of experience, and he took his lumps last year for sure, but had his fair share of big plays, a very physical defensive back. But they probably have the Thorpe leader going into the season in Leonard Moore. This guy was absolutely assignment sound last year and had his fair share of big plays. Pretty much everybody on this Notre Dame defense had like a big play, a big bounce of the ball, a big turnover last year. It was a common theme for the team, and they bring a lot of those guys back. Depending on the kind of development of a Christian Gray, this is going to be a lockdown unit. I think Christian Gray might be the weakest link, but he has high-level, major college football experience at this point. And maybe look at him the way we're looking at Des Ricks, except Christian Gray had some higher moments, some higher highs than Des Ricks did last year. They bring in Devontae Smith. And yes, they have Devontae Smith and Bryce Young on the defense, but they're not the same dudes. Devontae Smith also transfers from Bama, going to come in as a super experienced nickel to round out this rotation at the corner position. And at safety, they bring back a guy that I think got overshadowed by Xavier Watts in Adon Schuler, who got an interception versus A&M, and this is another ball hawk. This is another guy that can flip the field on a dime. This is a guy that can go up and make plays at the line of scrimmage. There is no drop-off with any of those 4 guys that I made because you got that Benjamin Morrison replacement in Leonard Moore, and it's a shame they didn't get to play next to each other more last year. And then I think Adon Schuler has a huge year ahead of him. And the one question I would have as an outsider is who's that other safety? You have the kind of special teams walk-on player who had some big moments late last year that could play the other safety in Luke Tolick. And you also have Jalen Stroman out of, I think he's from Virginia, who brings a lot of experience but was hurt last year, and he could be the guy that rounds out that secondary room. So who knows what happens in that 5th spot, but the other 4 are as good as it gets in college football. This is a top 10 secondary room at worst. So this defense from top to bottom is at worst solid, but it is at best a top 10 unit in that linebacker and secondary rooms. So guys, week 3, Colin Klein, Marcel Reed. What are we going to do against this thing? I think you got to test the interior. I think you got to run some inside zone. You got to make those linebackers try to fill gaps really hard and then hit them with some RPO. You got to test them where they're weak. And I think they'll be really strong in the secondary. You can maybe test Christian Gray and see what's going on there. Maybe overload that side, especially if Christian Gray and the other safety that's not Schuler are kind of stacked on that same side. You maybe test that side of the field. But you got to test the running game. You got to see how these guys fill in from week one. It looks like they're going to fill in just nicely, though. So they're going to have a hell of a defense yet again in South Bend. And you guys, tell me what you think. Am I overselling it? I know there's a lot of big names to replace, but watching the guys next to them and all of these guys have experience now, it's going to be money once again. So we got our work cut out for us. Let's talk about the offense. Obviously, Mike Denbrock led. Now it's CJ Carr at quarterback. Played in the spring game. Has a really natural, just classic look as a quarterback. Big, tall, effortless thrower. Is willing to kind of throw the ball in tight windows, kind of doing over-the-shoulder stuff with defenders blanketed on receivers, and that might get him in trouble. Who knows? But I think he has what you want as a quarterback to build around. Kind of a balanced player, just a really good arm, athletic enough. You're not going to have that, 3rd and 3 get-out-of-jail-free card you had with Riley Leonard last year. That was their short yardage play there. Even though they had Jeremiah Love, Riley Leonard was the go-to short yard guy, so that'll be an adjustment, but I'm sure with that O-line and that running back room, they'll be able to adjust just fine to that. But I think he's going to be solid. Now, the thing is, they did kind of retool the receiver room a little bit. They bring back Jaden Greathouse, who they expected kind of a breakout year last year from, and it didn't happen until the very end of the season, where he had like 200-plus yards and a bunch of touchdowns the last 2 games of the season in the playoffs, in the Natty. It was a godsend late, and Notre Dame fans were wondering where that had been all year. Can he do that for a whole season? Can he come out the gates and be that true wide receiver one that leads an offense and helps a young quarterback out from the beginning? They bring back Jordan Faison, former walk-on, smaller build, kind of the receiver 4 last year, who developed and became a go-to guy in the playoffs for him. We'll see how that goes, building chemistry with the quarterback. Then they bring in Malachi Fields. And this is a very interesting player. Another big-bodied guy, just like Jaden Greathouse, taller than Greathouse. He's 6'4", strong-bodied, strong arms. They're going to be a strong contested catch and short game receiver group. But I don't know if they really have the players that take it over the top. So you could be looking at an improved and more consistent passing game, but I still don't know if they're striking fear into the hearts of safeties just yet with this look. We'll see. I think they're expecting better play, but I really don't know if this is like one of those top-tier receiver rooms. It's definitely not a top-tier receiver room, but I don't know if this is an upper echelon game-breaking receiver room. It could be very solid with an improved passer in CJ Carr. But it'll all be stabilized by an elite running game. It'll all be stabilized by an elite offensive line. I'm going to list the names of the offensive linemen, and Aggies, we're going to recognize all of them. It's Anthony Knapp, Billy Schrouth, Ashton Craig, Charles Jagasaw, who is now out. Who knows who fills in for his spot? He is probably out for the A&M game. It sounds like he will return in the season. Y'all might want to shed some light on that, Notre Dame fans, but I think he'll be out for week 3. And then at right tackle, it's Emil Wagner. These are all guys that played a lot of football last year. They lost 3 players that started games for them last year to the portal, and they still feel like they might have the best offensive line in the country. It's an absolute offensive line factory at Notre Dame, and we can talk about the Charles Jagasaw injury. It's very unfortunate for him. He missed a lot of last year, played very, very late last year, and he got hurt in a ATV accident this offseason. Just stuff you hate to see. I feel so bad for the guy after missing last year. He has all the talent in the world. Hopefully he rebounds well, but you just feel like someone's going to step up. It could be a Will Black, the freshman. It could be someone changing positions. Who knows who fills in there, but I have no doubt they will. This O-line is going to lead an amazing running game behind Jeremiah Love, maybe the best running back in the country. And I'm saying that as someone who loves Le'Veon Moss. There are maybe 2 or 3 guys that could go toe-to-toe or even surpass Le'Veon in my mind, and this happens to be one of them. Jadarian Price and Anais Williams, who actually played really, really well in one of the playoff games. I think it was maybe the Penn State game, had a bunch of receptions, a great receiving running back. He's back. They bring back the 3rd guy, and that's another parallel to A&M. A&M, we thought we might lose some of our depth pieces at running back because so many guys have to share the rock. But in today's day and age where you have a chance to go 16 games deep like Notre Dame did, you want those bodies. You want to be able to kind of rest them and kind of throttle and not overplay guys, because we saw Jeremiah Love playing on one leg late in the season, still able to play through that. But you want to avoid that if you can, and the more bodies, the better. And it's just amazing to be able to do that in today's day and age. And credit to the coaching staff for using that as a selling point for their team, keeping these guys together. And it's true. You preserve your bodies for the season and the next level by having a lot of guys to play off of. But this running game should be nasty. Even though you lose that running quarterback, just bringing that whole room back, maybe elevating that passing game. We'll see what happens with the offense. It has to develop that passing game, because if you have that passing game, maybe you get over the hump versus Ohio State. That's the last thing that's missing for Notre Dame right now, is a consistent passing game that doesn't evade you. You don't have, wild decisions from the quarterback in the passing game. CJ Carr is inexperienced. Here's the thing with Notre Dame. If you look at their schedule, and I'll pull it up right now, this thing is extremely top-heavy. And when you look at a top-heavy schedule and you're breaking in a new quarterback, that is the biggest holdup in my mind for a football season. You're at Miami from the rip. You get your bye week right away, which is a godsend, because your two toughest games are probably games 1 and 2, and you get a bye sandwiched in between them. Good for Notre Dame. Then you're playing A&M at home. That is the ultimate test for your young quarterback and your hopefully new-look passing game right out the gate. It's also going to be a test for Chris Ash, who's going to be the new man at the helm of this defense. I think he has all the tools he could ever need, but let's see that thing get over the hump right away. But you get through those two, you get through a weird game on the road at Arkansas, who's going to be absolutely electric for that game. Notre Dame's coming to town. They're going to be crazy. That is a great fan base, speaking from experience. Maybe they don't win a lot of games, but that is a good fan base. It'll be crazy. Get through that weird one versus Boise State. And then you got North Carolina and USC. And after that, things open up a lot. You got Boston College, Navy, Pitt, Syracuse, Stanford. Maybe a couple challenges like in a Syracuse. Maybe, who knows what Navy can bring. But really getting through those first two games with the young guy at the helm. If you get through those two games, you have a mulligan. And with this schedule, with a little bit more meat on the bone than last year, maybe even 10-2 gets you in without a conference championship. That is on the table this year, where it probably wasn't last year. So this season is really defined early, just as it was last year. I mean, you had the A&M game out the rip last year, and that was kind of the one-trick pony of the season. Kind of, like we talked about how win that game and just kind of get through the rest, and they didn't, but then they did. This year it's 2 games with the new quarterback. So, guys, how do you feel about Notre Dame? How do you feel about A&M traveling to South Bend in Week 3? To me, this is probably the second best team on the schedule. I think Texas is the best team top to bottom. Notre Dame could be as good or better than them. Just projecting, I'm feeling like this is a close second, and I think Notre Dame absolutely has a playoff, path right ahead of them. They got to get through the first 2, and A&M fans really, really hope they don't. So we'll see what happens in Week 3. I'm excited to replay that game. I'm excited to break down that game when the time comes. And Notre Dame fans, how did I do? Correct me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm too high on the team. Tell me where I'm too low on the team. I want to hear from you guys. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video coming up on Monday. Y'all have a good one. Gig 'em.